a country in history that has had a catastrophe like this. We've had, I believe, and I think you believe this too. You know, you hear 12
Yeah.
million, 13. I believe it's over 20 million people came into our country.
Yeah.
Many coming from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions, or a bigger version of that is
Yeah.
insane asylums, and many are terrorists. And I'll tell you what, they're coming not just from South America, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from all over the world. They're coming from Asia, they're
Yeah.
coming from the Middle East, they're coming from countries that are uh, stupidly and horribly bombing Israel October 7th. They're coming from all over
Yeah.
the government. These are defective people, and they're not people that should be running it. But where you see it the best is the border, because you have millions of people coming in a month, and then she gets up and she tries to pretend like she's going to do something. She had 3.5 years. And by the way, they have another 5 months that they can do something, but they
Yeah.
won't do anything. It's all talk. She's
No,
incompetent and he's incompetent. And frankly, I think that she's more incompetent than he is. And that's saying something,
I
because
think
he's not.
it is essential to have a secure border. I mean, you're really not a country unless you have a
Correct.
secure border. And
And
uh,
secure elections,
you
too.
know, absolutely secure elections. And so it's just essential to have a real border, or we can't function as a country. And our service, our essential services are being overwhelmed in a lot of cities. Um, as we were talking about earlier, I think having a legal immigration process that is smooth and efficient and done well. And speaking as someone who is a legal immigrant, and I think I mean, like one way to think of it is, who do you want on your team? Who's robbing you? You'll be arrested.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's insane.
It's right. I mean, what's happening with crime, and our police are so good, but they're not allowed to do their job. But I have to tell you, Elon, I
They're
hate
not.
to say it because it's such a downer to say it. I hate to say it. I hate it. But uh, you have a lot of people that just shouldn't be. I think it's a much bigger number than you think. They're
I
allowing,
think you're
again,
right.
they're
Yeah.
allowing people from their jails. And if you were running one of these countries where they're coming from, you would have had all of them. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers, they're taking, frankly, their prisoners, they're emptying out their prisons. They're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're
Yeah.
delivering them into
But
the.
that's what Castro did.
Yeah,
That
well, he did on a much smaller scale.
yeah.
You know, it was a much smaller
Yeah.
scale. But this is a massive scale because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening: crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. You know, this is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be.
Yeah.
And I saw it today in New York, where somebody was knifed, where they raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters, and started
Sure.
pulling out the knives, and bad things happened today. But this is happening every day. These are rough people. These are people that are in jail for
Yeah.
murder and all sorts of things, and they're releasing them into our country, and they're telling them, if you come back, we're going to kill you. We're going to give you the death penalty or kill you. So they don't want to come back. But these are rough people.
Yeah.
These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people, and it's horrible what they're doing. And she's in charge of it, because now she's trying to say she
Sure.
had nothing to do with it, and she's such a liar, because she was called the border czar the first day, and it was on the headlines of every newspaper. She's the border czar, and she never even went there. She went to one location which had nothing to do with where the problem is. She went in and out, I
Right.
guess, because she was getting a lot of pressure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
had nothing to do with the
Now
problem.
she's
She's trying to say that she wasn't really involved, and the whole thing is horrible. She was totally in charge. She could have shut the border down without him. He didn't know what he was doing anyway, so he wouldn't have even known
Yeah.
what happened. You could shut the border down. He
Yeah,
wouldn't
it's
even know.
simply not working.
No,
It's,
it's
I mean,
horrible.
whether it's a question of intention or competence, either way, we don't have a secure border, and we have people streaming over like it looks like a World War Z zombie apocalypse at times. And sometimes you got to sort of wonder, like, is it real or not? So because you see things, you're like, is it real? So I went to the border at Eagle Pass, and I saw for myself in Texas, and I was like, okay, it's real. I'm like seeing this in real time. I actually
Want to
posted the
work
video.
or whatever. And these countries are getting rid of non-productive people in the caravans in many cases. and they're also getting rid of their murderers and their drug dealers and the people that are
Yeah,
really brutal people. And they're coming into our country
yeah,
at levels that have never been seen before. And I saw an ad just before I got on the air. I'm walking over here, and I saw an ad by Kamala saying how she is going to provide border security. Where has she been for 3.5 years? For 3.5 years,
yeah. No, no.
we have 20 million people
This I
poured
think is
in. It's a terrible
yeah. I
thing.
think this, frankly, I think this is a fundamental existential issue for the United States. And if we have another 4 more years of open borders, and it's going to be even worse with another 4 more years, it's going to be even worse than it's been for the past 3.5 years. I'm not sure we've got a country
You don't have
left
a country
at that
left.
point. Overwhelm everything in the
We're
U.S.
already
So
overwhelmed, Elon. We're overwhelmed. You had to see the news tonight about New York. New York, and I love that place, and what they're doing to it is horrible, what they're doing to it. And all the courts do is they
yeah.
try and focus on Trump. Okay, then let's focus on Trump, who did nothing wrong. I complain about a rigged election. Elon, what's happened is unbelievable. You have from Africa, from the Congo, they're coming from the Congo, and 22 people came in from the Congo recently, and they're murderers, and they're dropped. They drop them. They take them out of jails, which is very expensive, to maintain the jails. Although they don't do too much maintaining, I can tell you. But they take them out of jails, prisons. They take them out, and they bring them to the United States. They deposit them in the United States and say, "Don't ever come back, or you're going to be executed." To
Yeah.
finish this up, we're going to have the largest deportation in history of this country, and we have no choice. Otherwise, we're going to have a country. What they've done to our country. Think of it, with in Venezuela and in some of these other countries, crime is down 50, 60, 70, 80%.
Behind
And
his
you
head
would
and
be
basically shot him.
what they did
Biden.
with this guy,
So
and I'm no
yeah.
fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan mess, if you think of it,
Well,
and we wouldn't have had
yeah.
Afghanistan. But we think of it,
Well, yeah.
you take a few of those events away, and we have a different world. We would also have
No,
no
no, you're yeah.
inflation was caused by oil.
Yeah, no, no. I think you're making an excellent point here, which is that when other countries can, that are, are thinking about invading or doing bad things, when they're thinking about that, they're thinking about, okay, what's the American president going to do, and do they fear the American president, or is there someone they do not respect or and do not fear? And I think they would they rightfully be. I mean, look at that the footage of the assassination. They're like, okay, uh, President Trump is like, don't mess with me. I mean, that's like, whereas I think people are not going to be, and they obviously have not been at all intimidated by Biden, and they certainly will not be intimidated by Kamala. And you have to really think of that in the context of global security. That if the American president is someone that, like, evil dictators are scared of, that makes a huge difference to the security of the world.
So I had a good relationship with Putin, despite the Russia hoax that lasted for over 2 years. Just a hoax created by Hillary Clinton and Adam Shifty Schiff, some just bad people, just sick people, frankly. I mean, Schiff is a sick person. He's going to end up probably being a senator. It's hard to believe. The whole thing is hard to believe. But, they put our country in danger with that stuff, too. They actually, when they make up stories, and you have to fight your way out of it for a long time. But I know Putin very well. I got along with him very well. He respected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. I shut down Nord Stream 2. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest, I think, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. Biden came, and then they say,
Yeah,
I loved Russia. I was a friend of Putin, and I loved Russia. No, he actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline, the biggest pipeline. They were looking at that to
yeah,
fund, and this pathetic president gets in there, and the first thing he did, one of the early things he did, is he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow.
Yeah.
I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train
Consistent.
that catches.
Certainly but I mean, I think it's just worth emphasizing, to listeners, that the immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security, because there's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to
I
do,
know every one of
and
them.
it puts the whole
Yep.
world in danger.
Elon, I know every one
It's
of
a
them,
big
and I know
deal.
them well. I know
Yeah.
Putin. I know President Xi. I know Kim Jong Un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, "Oh, this is terrible." He said, "I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough. They're smart. They're vicious, and they're going to protect their country. Whether they love their country, they probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are
Yeah.
tough people. They're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me. When I was there, and I say it with respect because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. And I meant it. And they said, we'll
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
They didn't buy oil. Other countries, likewise.
Sure.
You want to buy, you're not doing business with the United States. And they were at a point where they had no money for Hamas. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for any of these instruments of terror. And it was amazing. President Obama, just before entering, it's a sort of a ritual. And I sat down with him and we talked. It was supposed to be for a very short period of time. It turned out to be a long period of time. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. I had that problem worked out very quickly. It was nasty at the beginning with Rocket Man and, all the different things.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden I
Those
got a
some those
call.
those some
Oh,
those were some epic tweets, by the way.
yeah, they
Those
were,
were
no,
like
they were epic
absolutely.
everything. He said that he has a red button on his desk. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but my red button is much bigger and my red button works. And then I called him Little
Yeah.
Rocket Man of Little Rocket Man. Anyway, here's the bottom line. All of a sudden I got a call from him and they said they want to meet. They want to meet me. And we met,
Yeah.
as you remember, we met in Singapore. We met also in Vietnam. And I got along with them great. We were
Yeah.
in no danger. But
Yeah. It's
President
because
Obama thought
they
we were going to
respond.
end up in
Yeah.
a nuclear war with him. And let me tell you, he's
Yeah.
got a
It's not
lot of
true.
nuclear stuff too. He's
Exactly.
got plenty of nuclear.
It's
He can do plenty of damage.
it's
So,
yes. I mean, it's because I mean, people like Kim Jong Un, they respond to
yeah.
strength, not weakness,
Well,
and
it was an amazing period. But we were not in danger with him because of me. I always
yeah.
say that we have enemies on the outside and we have enemies on the inside. We have some really bad people in our government and people that are and controlling of the people. I mean, I'd mention names, but I really don't want to give them the credit. But we have some really bad, and I say they're more dangerous than Russia and China. If you have a smart president, a president that gets it, we are not in danger from those countries because they need us and they need our help. I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden and Bush, to a certain extent, in all fairness, forced Russia and China together. And if you're a history student, the first thing you learn is you cannot let Russia and China align. But then they also got, if you take a look, Iran and they have North Korea. That's, they call it the axis of evil. In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat.
Yeah.
The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise one eighth of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming, because we have 5 countries
Well,
now that
yeah.
have significant nuclear power, and we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden. Biden did something with Russia. There was no chance of him ever going in. And when I left, and then after I left, they started forming big armies on the border with Ukraine, right? And I looked at that and I thought he was doing that because Putin's a good negotiator. I thought he was doing that to negotiate. But then Biden started saying such stupid things. For instance, he said that it can be a NATO country. Now, Russia, for as long as there's been NATO, has said we're never going to agree to that. And we go right up front and say that. And we did things and said things through this president with a low IQ, very low IQ. He had a low IQ 30 years ago, by the way, but now he might not even have a IQ at all. There's nothing on the board that goes this low. He said things that were so stupid that war would have been that war had zero chance of happening if I were there. Zero chance. He was saying everything
Yeah.
the opposite. Everything the opposite. And it's so sad because many more people have been killed in Ukraine than you read about. You don't read about how bloody it is and how disaster. Hey,
Sure.
look, just in the two armies, you lost a 500,000 people. And
Yeah.
uh, and
No,
Ukraine's
it's
having a hard time. Ukraine, I don't know if you saw
yeah.
the article recently, and it's true. You don't hear the true story, but if you think about it, Russia's gone. Russia defeated Germany with us, and they defeated Napoleon. They've been around a long time. They're a big fighting
Yeah.
force,
Sure. Of
and it's
course.
very unfair. And Ukraine now doesn't have enough men. They're now using young men and very old men to fight, and we're in a very bad position. And I'm not going to blame exclusively, but I can tell you I could have stopped that, and a smart president could have stopped that. It wouldn't have happened. But we had a
Yeah.
man that actually made it. It made it more prevalent.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people underrate the risk of World War III, and it's just when you're looking at the risk of global thermonuclear warfare, it's game over for humanity, and that's it's something that people have. I think after the end of the Cold War, people have become complacent about, but they actually have forgotten that there are currently a lot of nuclear missiles that have targeting parameters for the United States from other
100%.
countries.
And one of the things
And
we're going to do is
it's
we're going to
yeah,
build an Iron Dome over us. Israel has it. We're going to have the best Iron Dome in the world. We need it, and we're going to make it all in the United States. 100% in some cases. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen, and it's a shame. And that's the thing that people most care about, in my opinion. They care about the border a lot. And we discuss the border at great length. It's nice to have a
yeah.
forum like this where I can discuss something at length. And by the way, you think Biden could do this interview? Do you think that Kamala could do this interview? They would take a pass on
No, they
you.
could not.
So they don't need Elon. They don't need Elon screaming out questions. It's pretty sad when you think that somebody that does this for a living can't answer a question or is afraid to do an interview. And in her case, with a very friendly interview, she's got all friendly interviewers. It's pretty sad.
Yes,
But the
absolutely.
big thing now is the
Well, that
economy, Elon. And
yeah,
as much as
yeah,
I mean, I view nuclear as the single most important thing, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't understand that. But it doesn't have to. If I understand it, that's all you need. Because if I was president, you're not going to have that kind of a problem. But the thing that they really is making them angry is what Kamala and Biden have allowed to happen to the economy. It's a disaster with inflation. The inflation, it
yeah,
doesn't matter what you make. The inflation is eating you alive. If you're a worker or if you're just a middle income person, you can't afford. 4 years ago, 5 years ago, people were saving a lot of money. Today, they're using
yeah.
all their money and borrowing money just to live. It's a horrible thing
Right.
that's happening, and we'll end that
Well, I think
quickly.
a lot of yeah, a lot of people just don't understand where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from government overspending because the checks never bounce when it's written by the government. So if the government spends far more than it brings in, that increases the money supply, and if the money supply increases faster than the rate of goods and services,
That's right.
that's inflation. Um, so really, we need to have we need to reduce our government spending, and we need to re-examine. I think we need like a government efficiency commission to say like, hey, where are we spending money that's sensible? Where is it not
Right.
sensible? And we need to live within our means. We're currently adding, I think, $1 trillion to the deficit every
That's
roughly
right.
every 100 days.
That's right.
And the interest payments on the national debt have now exceed the defense budget. It's on the order of $1 trillion,
It's interest.
and it keeps
Yeah, I
growing.
rebuilt. We have to bring energy
Yeah,
prices down. Energy started it. The price of gasoline. Now your cars don't require too much gasoline, so you have a good and you do make gasoline. Elon is the cost of energy. Not only gasoline, it's the cost of heating your house and cooling your house. That has
sure.
to come down. It's gone up 100%, 150, and 200%, and that has to come down. When that comes down, and we're going to
Yeah,
drill, baby, drill. They stopped drilling, and then they went back to drilling because they went back to the Trump policy. But if they won the day after they get into office, we're going to this country will go out of business because they're going to go to an energy policy that's not sustainable, wind and different things. You're not going to have anything.
yeah,
And I know you're a big fan of the AI, and I have to say
yeah,
that AI, and this is shocking to me, but AI requires twice the energy that the country already produces for everything. So you're going to have to build. We're going to have to build a lot of energy for the whole country, if you can believe it.
sure. Well, just going, back to this, like this basic thing, which that people try to make it sound complicated, but it's not. But inflation is caused by government
Right.
overspending. Would you agree that we need to take a look at government
Yes.
spending and have perhaps a government efficiency commission that just tries to make the spending sensible and so the country lives within its means, just like a
The
person does.
waste is incredible, and nobody
It
negotiates
is.
prices. You used to have a lot of people making jets, and you end up with two companies, and they'll probably try and merge at some point. I mean, I went through it like Air Force, just a thing like Air Force One. One of the first documents they asked me to sign, a general walks in, sir, would you please sign this document? And what is it? Air Force One. That's with Boeing, which is basically two planes, two 747s, and the price was
Yeah.
$5.7 billion for two planes. Now they're
Wow.
highly sophisticated.
That's
They're
insane.
even nicer than your plane, okay? But much more sophisticated. They're very. I won't say what's on it, but they got a lot of stuff on it. Anyway,
Crazy
it's a
number.
crazy number. But I said I'm not going to pay 5.7. I'm not going to do it. I said, who made the deal? Obama and his people. I said, well, then I know the deal's no good. I'm not going to do it. And over a course of about 4 weeks, by my saying I'm not going to do it, I got the price reduced by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane, other than we had a nicer paint job, if you want to know the truth. But for Boeing, man, you guys must make a lot of money if you can reduce the price by that. But now what I do hear is that they're going back to the Biden administration and wanting big cost overruns, because they see these dopey suckers in there, and they'll end up getting some of the money back. But I shaved it by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane, and you can now take that and multiply that out times thousands of other
Exactly.
items, and
Multiply it by
yeah,
a
the
zillion,
numbers are
and yeah, yeah.
astronomical. I agree with
And
you.
I'd be happy to help out on such a commission
I'd
if
love
if
it.
it were formed.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, "You want to quit?" They go on strike.
Yeah.
I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, "That's okay. You're all gone. You're all gone." So every one of you is gone, and you are the greatest. You would be very good. Oh, you would love it. But if you look at Argentina.
Well, I'd be happy to
Yeah, by
help
the way,
out.
congratulations. I
Yeah.
just looked at the number of people that are listening to you and I chat. We'll call it a chat. But
Yeah.
congratulations. This is very good. He ran on MAGA, and I hear he's doing really a terrific job. It's called Make Argentina Great Again. It worked out perfectly. He came in, he bought a lot of hats, he brought everything, but he's doing a big job. He really cut. And I'm hearing
Yeah.
they're starting to do pretty well. Inflation's getting down. They had like
Yes. Exactly.
2,000%. And they had inflation like not normal inflation. They had the real deal. But we're going to
Yeah.
have that pretty soon. We have. I think we
Yeah.
have the worst inflation we've had in 100 years. They say it's 48 years. I don't believe it. I think we have the worst. They
Yeah.
don't include a lot of the items that should be included. You know.
Yeah. Well, it's just from government overspending and not spending taxpayer money
Yeah.
effectively, and having just like so many departments you can't even name them all, and what Malay is doing.
Half what it is in Washington. And
Yeah.
these people don't care
Well,
about the
yeah.
students in these, faraway states. And it'd
Well,
be unbelievable.
yeah. I think you're making a good point in that if the states have to if if each state has to compete against other states, then people will
That's
naturally
right.
move to states where it's better.
Well, like
It's just
amazing.
people moving out.
Isn't it amazing to you as a businessman that they can even survive? Like Illinois, so many people are leaving, and you wonder how do they survive? I mean, how do they survive? Uh, I saw where you left California and you moved to Texas. Texas does a great job. But, I
Yeah,
mean, I just wonder how do these states survive when big businesses, a big oil company just left California, as you know, and they moved to Texas. How do these big states survive when they lose so many businesses and their taxes are already really high? The taxes are among the highest
yeah.
taxes. You almost wonder how do they continue on? And in many cases, the governors don't do a good job in their crime-ridden places. You wonder how do they continue to just go on? It's
Well,
not a good
I think there's.
situation.
I mean, I think the only thing that's going to force some of these states to change is if they risk bankruptcy and they're not getting bailed out by the federal
Right,
government.
right. Well, you're
That's
gonna
that's
you're
the
gonna
only thing
have
that's going to
that.
get them to change.
You remember the
Yeah,
area in California where they had that, where I guess somebody had sticky fingers and they stole a lot of money, and they went into a form of chapter, and it was very
yeah,
nasty for
yeah.
a period of time. But now it's probably the most popular place in all of California. So at some point something like that may have to happen. And we're going to bring those people back and help those people. We've got to get the prices down. When I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years ago,
Sure.
when you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at
Yeah,
it's sticker
I
shock.
think
They
it.
call it
Yeah,
sticker shock, right?
I guess really two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves the living
Right.
standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason. But unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the '80s, but it's been 40 years since we had
That's right.
anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think uh, there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation.
Yeah.
And
Well,
if it was
Elon,
those two things, yeah, those are the big
yeah, we
deals.
set a record. We did more deregulation and more restrictions on all of the different businesses than any other president. Remember, I had the rule for everyone we put in, you have to get rid of 10 or 12. And we did
Yeah,
radical cuts on all of that, and a lot of that's being put back by this administration. Great job numbers, but we were set to really start reducing debt, and we're sitting on the biggest pile of liquid gold anywhere in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Russia, and we were going to drill, and we were going to make so much money. We were going to supply Europe with oil. I had stopped the Russian pipeline, and we were going to supply them with oil and gas. We were going to make a fortune, and then the COVID came in, and we really had to divert. Then what happened is when they came in, we kept a lot of businesses alive. If I didn't do what we did, we would have had a 1929 type depression. But the problem is when Biden came in, he got trillions of dollars and just started spending it stupidly. You didn't need it anymore. We got over that bad period where everybody was the best years we've ever had in business were during the Trump years, and also said that African American, Hispanic American were so incredible. They were having the best Asian American women, men, young people without a diploma, young people that graduated from the best colleges, from MIT, from the Wharton School, from all of the great colleges, Harvard. They were doing better, and people without a diploma were doing better, and everybody was happy. And then COVID came, and we
sure.
had the problem is they spent trillions and trillions of dollars. They wasted. They shouldn't have taken any money, and we wouldn't be having inflation right now, which is killing our country.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's probably different from what most people would assume. Because my views are actually pretty, I think, moderate in this regard, which is that I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry and the people that have worked very hard in those industries to provide the necessary energy to support the economy. And if we were to stop using oil and gas right now, we would all be starving, and the economy would collapse. So it's, I don't think it's right to sort of vilify the oil and gas industry. And I the world has a certain demand for oil and gas, and it's probably better if the United States provides that than some other countries.
Sure.
And it would help with prosperity in the U.S. At a time. But so there's not like we don't need to rush, and we don't need to, like, stop farmers from farming, or you know uh, prevent people from having steaks, or
Right.
basic stuff like
Right.
that. Like you can leave the farmers alone,
I agree.
in
How
my opinion.
crazy is that, where
I mean,
you have farmers that are not allowed to farm anymore and have to get rid of their cattle, and the whole world is
yeah,
a
that's
little
silly.
crazy, but it's largely taken its lead from us. I just say, though, I've heard in terms of the fossil fuel, because even to create your electric car and create the electricity needed for the electric car, fossil fuel is what really creates that at the generating plants. And, so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to, but I do hear Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. The first thing that Biden did was unimprove to get rid of it. He ended
Yeah.
it. His his secretary went in and she ended it. And what a disgrace. That's Anwar. That's bigger, or they think it could be bigger than Saudi Arabia in Alaska. Could be bigger than Saudi Arabia. But they went in and they terminated it. And I'll get it going very quickly, because not only is it big for Alaska, I mean, you talk about economic development, that for the United States, I mean, that is, they say bigger than Saudi Arabia or the same size, and pure,
Yeah.
really good People talk about global warming, or they talk about climate change, but they never talk about nuclear warming. And to me,
Sure.
that's an immediate problem, because you have, as I said, 5 countries where you have major nuclear, and probably some others are getting there, and that's very dangerous. That's where you need a strong American president, because you don't want to have this proliferation. But you have climate change. It's not, and everything's a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. And when I talk
Yeah, yeah.
about
Nuclear power is underrated. It's
I'll
awesome.
prevent World War
Yeah.
III, I will. But the truth
Okay.
is that you have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is
Yeah.
a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is
Absolutely, you're
underrated.
right.
And it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. Um, and if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not going to try to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining
Right.
operation, and there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year, and you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation
In
that people
Florida.
can't get it.
This was a Biden administration did something that's never been done in this country, and that's go after their political opponent, me, with this nonsense, and just nonsense. In the big case in Florida, we won, but they always pick a judge and a jury, and they use the local DAs, they use the local attorney generals, like Fani, Fani, spelled
Yeah,
Fani, Fani, and it's
yeah,
all a big hoax, and it's all run from there. Like in Manhattan, the one of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state. The Letitia James deal was run by a person from the Department of Justice, Biden. They've never done this before,
sure.
and they set up a very bad precedent. It's called lawfare, warfare.
Yeah,
It's a terrible thing, and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics and third world countries, but it's never
yeah,
happened. You fight for election integrity, and you end up getting indicted because you're fighting for election integrity. And when the day comes that you can't fight for election integrity, you don't have a country anymore. So what happens? What
Yeah.
happens is they went after their political opponent, me. Now Biden's,
We just don't have a president right
you
now.
don't
That's
have a
just obviously the
president, and she's
case.
going to be worse than him
Um,
because she is a San Francisco liberal who destroyed San Francisco, and then as attorney general, she destroyed California. You talk about location, and we're talking about the sun and the water and all. There's nothing better than California. She has destroyed that. She was the original DA. She was the original in San Francisco. She was the original attorney general in California. What she has done to California is, well, you know better than I do. You just left California for a lot of those reasons. And what she's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states now you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our
yeah.
country is becoming a very dangerous place. And she is a radical left San Francisco liberal. And now she's trying to protect. Now she's looking like she wants to be more Trump than Trump, if that's possible. I don't think it's possible, but she wants to be more Trump than
Well,
Trump.
yeah.
I want a wall. I
I
want,
think that's
you know, she
yeah.
wants to release all the
Yeah.
prisoners that are in detention, and some of these guys later they're obsolete. You find a better way to. The only thing that's not obsolete is a wall and a wheel, and the wall. You know, I built hundreds of miles of wall, and that's why we had such good numbers. I was going to add
Yeah.
200 miles. We bought it. We could have flipped it up in 3 weeks, and they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. That meant, I said, wow, that means that they actually do want to have open borders. She wants to have open borders, and now she's going like she's tough on the border. It's such a lie.
Yeah. This is simply not
Yeah,
true. This is simply
no,
not
and
true.
everybody
Yeah.
knows
It's
it's
simply not
not true.
true.
It's a disgrace that she can
Yeah.
say it.
No, I mean, obviously, what's happening sort of overnight is they're rewriting history and making Kamala sound like a moderate when in fact she is far left, like far
Worse
left.
than Bernie
Um,
Sanders. She is considered more
yeah,
liberal by far than Bernie Sanders. She's a radical left lunatic, and if she's going to be our president, very quickly, you're not going to have a country anymore. And she'll go back to all of
yeah,
the things that she believes in. She believes in defunding the police. She believes in no fracking, zero. You don't. Now all of a sudden
yeah,
she's
yeah,
saying, "No, I will. I really want to see fracking." If they got in, the day she got in, she'll end fracking. And by the way, if people didn't think that, the lunatics that really believe in that, they won't vote for her. Like like the
yeah,
Palestinians and Israel. She is so anti-Israel, and she's bad for both. Biden actually did something that was impossible. Both sides hate him. Both sides. That was a hard
yeah.
thing to do. Unification.
Yeah, no, no. I mean, Netanyahu came to give a talk to a joint Senate and House sitting, and I was there, and Kamala stood him up. What does that say?
I think
Um,
it's highly
that's
disrespectful. And I say, if you're a Jewish person or if you believe in Israel, if you're a person that, is a very pro-Israel, if you vote for her, it's worse than Biden. And Biden was bad. But if you vote for her, you ought to have your head examined. And you see tonight, I mean, as we're doing, swamped. We'll use the term that's
yeah,
appropriate, swamped. But they
yeah.
swamp it by shooting enough missiles. You know this better than anybody. By shooting enough missiles,
So,
they can't defend themselves. They just obliterate the whole
yeah.
place. And that's what some people think they're looking to do. And we have no leadership.
I think you're right. I mean, it really it's important for the public that may be listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before the last like month, and say, is that a track record you agree with? And I think if you're an independent moderate, you definitely would not agree with it, because it is her behavior has been far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she in fact is not moderate.
Well,
Um, so
her
I think
running
that,
mate approved, signed into legislation, tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now
yeah,
that's
yeah,
all I
that's
have to
weird.
hear. Tampons in
That's
boys'
weird.
bathrooms, and that means she believes
Yeah,
in that too. I mean,
yeah,
she
that's
she
not
picked this
okay.
guy.